wishing I could take a break from this world. Running on a hamster wheel, but searching for something I can't feel. I just wanna be a lost girl and fly. Take a breath, feel my wings spread, levitate above the ground and make eye contact with clouds. Now I'm rising, I'm soaring above it all. I just wanna be free. Finally, I 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 always stay dreaming, never imagine I lose my spark. Living in this crazy time, putting back the pieces of my mind. I know how to run from the dark and fly. Feel my wings spread, levitate into the clouds. I'm so high above the ground. I'm rising, I'm soaring above it all. I just wanna be free. Finally, I wanna be free.
Race, conversations, and law enforcement. This is Moses' People Speak. Hello, everyone. This is Terry Watson with Moses People Speak. I am very excited today to be back with you all. As you know, we took a break due to the symposium, and the symposium went really well. We had about 90 people attend, so thank you all. So before we get started today in this amazing conversation with Mr. Abraham Bolden, I wanted to just give a quick announcement about what's going on this week. First, before we get started with that, I want to mention that in June, we're going to be talking to our brother Raymond Hicks out of Florida. Raymond is the author of I'm Still Standing, a deputy sheriff who was a whistleblower, and we will be speaking with him in June. So please stay tuned for that episode as well. Quick announcement, if you don't know by now, we are going to have a watch party and our first watch and discuss after the symposium. We're going to be viewing the film Women in Blue, which is a film that talks about law enforcement and women in law enforcement that's trying to make that change. We're going to view the film tomorrow at 7:30. And then right after that, on the very next day, on Wednesday, we're going to have a panel discussion featuring folks from the film as well as some law enforcement individuals. Again, I'm looking forward to that conversation. It'll be moderated by our very own Iris Richardson, who's an amazing moderator. So I really look forward to that conversation. All right, moving on to today's conversation. Today we have with us backstage Abraham Bolden. This is a conversation that I was looking forward to for a good month now. Abraham Bolden was appointed by President John F. Kennedy back in 1961. He was the first African-American Secret Service agent assigned to White House detail in an attempt to integrate the previously all-white Secret Service. After expressing concerns about segregational practices, the behavior of a few agents, and the lack of communication in the agency, Mr. Bolden was framed and also imprisoned. Today, Mr. Bolden is an author of The Echo from Dealey Plaza, and today we will have a chance to speak with him. But before we bring him on, I want to show you this quick clip that we found of a show on the Kennedys, which actually had a picture, so depiction of Mr. Bolden himself. Well, welcome, Mr. Abraham Bolden. Welcome to Moses People Speak. How are you today?
Fine, sir. And
Awesome, awesome.
thank you for inviting me on the show. And this was one of the apex of my imagination growing up as a young black man, to be
Mm,
able to communicate with my people and maybe
mm,
solve some of the difficulties that we face.
mm. Yes, and I had a chance to really talk with some Sean Kennedy, who you've met with a couple of years back. I had a chance to read some of the articles that was written about your life, and I watched quite a lot of videos of your past interviews, even one um, that you did with ABC years back. But before we dive into that conversation, Mr. Bolden, I would love for you to tell us sort of your story. Why did you enter law enforcement? What were some of the things that led to you going into law enforcement, especially being the first black Secret Service agent appointed to the White House?
Yes, well, I grew up in East St. Louis, Illinois, and the times were somewhat like they are now.
Mm,
And it was a time period that our people were being lynched. They were being spat upon. We had separate facilities. And it was just like Mississippi. And our people were in sort of bad shape. Everybody had a job, though. That's one thing. In East St. Louis, it was stacked with packing houses, steel foundries, steel mills, box factories. And people came from all over, from Belleville, Illinois, all the way from St. Louis to be employed there. It was a poor town.
mm,
And I was always interested in the condition of my people because it seemed like the harder they tried, the more behind we came. And I often wondered about that. And I asked God, give me the wisdom, give me the input to someday go to my people and make a difference.
mm,
So after graduating from Lincoln High School, I was a trumpet player. I went to Lincoln University in Jefferson City, Missouri, on a trumpet scholarship. And I never thought I would be as good as I became. People used to call me Little Satch. And I was playing with some of the biggest bands in East St. Louis until I had an accident,
mm.
and a foolish accident, a young man's accident. Alcohol and ignorance, it didn't mix. It didn't mix. They just don't mix together.
Still doesn't.
Still does. And now, graduated from Lincoln High School, as I said, went to Lincoln University in Jefferson City, Missouri. I was still worried about the situation. See, the young children don't know today that some of the things that we face with the police departments, during my day, we had to face with governors, sheriffs, senators. They were the open antagonists against black motivation and progress. So instead of beating us with a club, they beat us with the law.
Mm,
And I wanted to learn something to eliminate that possibility. And I knew that the problem had to be solved.
Mm.
Now, I graduated from Lincoln University cum laude in 1956. Not that I was so smart, but I had dumb teachers. They thought I was smart.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, this urge, this motivation and love for my people, it just took hold of me. I couldn't think about anything else, and I couldn't keep my nose out of other folks' business. For instance, let me just tell you this. There was a girl, Alicia Hastings. She was a straight A student. She came to me one day and said, Abraham, I'm going to have to drop out because my people, I'm from a family of 12.
Mm.
And I'm going to have to drop out. My people can't, afford to send me.
Right.
So I said, wait a minute, Alicia. Let me see what I can do. So I wrote a column in the Clarion newspaper that was the Lincoln University newspaper. And I put in there the difference between how they put football players and athletes, how they gave them full scholarships, meal tickets, free room, free board, and all this, and compared that with a straight A chemistry and physics student.
Mm.
Well, the athletes didn't like that too well. Alicia got a full scholarship. But one
Wow.
night I was sitting at my desk and one of the persons that I had mentioned in the article knocked the door right off the hinges in my room. And so I was persona non grata with the athletic division from then on. But anyway, I accomplished one thing. So when I graduated, they had a job waiting for me in Haytown, Missouri,
Mm.
as a music instructor. Well, I had to wrestle with this because I was married then, and I told the wife that I would rather try something else.
Wow.
And she was reading St. Louis Post Dispatch, and they were looking for Pinkerton investigators. So my wife said, why don't you go over there and see, since you've been talking about being a policeman, justice, and how people are being treated and things. So I went over there at 705 Olive Street the next morning, Monday morning, walked up to the desk and told a young lady who was sitting there, I want to apply for the job as a Pinkerton agent. She said, we don't have a job open. And I pulled out the little clipping from my coat pocket and said, you do.
Mm.
She looked up at me. People, white folk they wasn't quite comfortable with a man looking them straight in the eye and saying, you do, disputing them. So she said, not for people like you.
Wow.
So I know what she meant, but there happened to be, and this is how God works. The district manager was visiting Pinkerton, as he did yearly, and taking an account of how that organization was progressing in St. Louis. He overheard the conversation, and his name was Mr. Mertz. And he came out and he said, what's the problem? And the little secretary said, he came to apply for the job that we have in the paper, but I told him we couldn't hire him. He said, yes, we can. Yes,
Wow.
we can. He called me in his office, gave me an application himself, and said, now, you making history, young man. He said, we've never had a Pinkerton detective. Said, we've had them on the guard force, standing around in uniform, but we have never had Pinkerton detective. He said, now, I'm going to hire you myself, and I want you to do the best job that you can. And I promised him that I would become an outstanding agent, which I think I did. I think I did. And after about a year, 7 months or so in 1957, my wife was reading that doggone Post-Dispatch again. And she said, you know, Abraham, the state police are hiring. I said, oh, I'm doing okay. I like the job at Pinkerton. She said, yeah, but you can't pay the bills. See, if you can't pay the bills, I don't care how you love it. You can love a job to death. But if you can't pay them light meals and grocery bills, man, you got to do something quick. So I went to Springfield and I applied for Illinois State Police job. And I became an Illinois State policeman. And they stationed me in Peoria, Illinois, District 8. And that in itself was also historical because I was the first black state patrolman, I think within 200 miles of Peoria, which was a little small town, mostly farmers, had bushels of corn in the back of the trunk. That it was a small hick town, 185,000 people. So now President Kennedy was running for president in 1960. And he was running against President Nixon. He came to Peoria to give a speech, and I was on the detail to direct the traffic as he came out of the airport. And as the car turned to my left, I had the traffic all stopped. President Kennedy was sitting on the back of a white Lincoln car. And he waved and I waved. Not knowing what the future would hold, my brothers and sisters, he waved and I waved.
Wow.
Later, I put on my regular street clothes and went to the Peoria courthouse where he gave an address. The next day, I was assigned to escort one of the Secret Service agents in charge from Springfield, Missouri, Mr. Baxter. He was investigating some check forgery and counterfeiting cases. And I asked Mr. Baxter, I said, do they have any black Secret Service agents? He says, I don't know, there may be one, I'm not sure. But if you're interested, why don't you apply? So I went to Springfield, took the test and everything, came out okay, and I became a Secret Service agent on October 30th of 1960.
Wow.
And they transferred me from Peoria to Chicago. And that's where things started changing. You know, I had in my mind, my dad, he raised patriotic children. You had to know all four stanzas to Star Spangled Banner. I pledge allegiance to the flag. And I had in my mind America as being the leader in justice and equality. I wanted to be a high part of that.
Right.
But I was very disappointed when I came to Chicago. The first thing that the chief did when he opened the first meeting that I was there was start off with one of those Mississippi Negro jokes. You know, this boy was down there and he got lost, and I said, sir, I thought you said that you didn't want to embarrass anybody. Now, if you tell that joke, you're going to embarrass me.
Mm.
Well, they say, you just thin skinned. I said, no, you tell your joke because I know something about white folk, too. He looked at me and I looked at him. See, I was never a back down guy. They didn't know that. I didn't back down from anything, man. If I had to take a licking, I'd take a licking and keep on ticking just like a time. Yes,
I
I
hear that.
would. Yes, I would. And so I became known then as a militant. Now, President Kennedy had won the election. He beat Nixon. And he won Chicago by some 8,000 votes. And that made the difference in the presidency who got elected. Now, they tell me that 7,999 of them votes were people who were laying in graves, but he won. Mayor Daley pushed it through. Kennedy came on April the 28th, 1961 to visit Chicago. Now, when assignments were given out, the Secret Service main duty is to protect the President of the United States. Whenever he went into a city, all Secret Service agents were assigned to some part of protecting the President. Now, when they drew up the list at the office, they had a policeman guarding the washroom. See, the senior agents that have been there a long time, they would be near the president. And the further you were, distance you were in seniority, that's what you got the lowest assignment. In other words, anybody who came after me would be standing out there next to the car. But there was one agent who came in after me, so now the position they gave me at first was upstairs near the ballroom. They made a change, so put a Chicago policeman up there in the ballroom, put me down by the washroom, lower level of McCormick Place. But as God would have it, he knew what was in my mind.
Right.
He knew what I wanted to do. See, sometime he would be fulfilling your dream, but you wouldn't know what was going on. When they put me down there in that washroom, I said, oh man, I'm not going to see the president of the United States, a man who is pushing for black people, a man who is pushing for equal justice for all people. And this was what I was looking for. And I'm standing down there in front of that washroom. But see, the first thing that the president wanted to do when the motorcade stopped, he got out of the car. First thing he wanted to do was use the washroom, and there I stood. Man, you can't beat that with a stick. And now I'm blocking the door. And I see all these feet coming down, and every politician that was anybody was with. The president stopped the whole entourage and stopped right in front of me. Lord have mercy. He says, "Are you a Secret Service agent or you one of Mayor Daley's finest?" I said, "I'm a Secret Service agent, Mr. President."
Mm.
He says, I'm kind of emotional that that speaks to my heart.
Take your time, brother.
Said, has there ever been a Secret Service agent assigned to the White House detail in Washington, D.C.? He already knew the answer because he had appointed a lot of firsts, blacks, women, a lot of firsts. And so I told him, he said, would you like to be on White House detail? I said, yes, sir, Mr. President. He said, I'll be looking forward to seeing you soon.
Wow.
And we shook hands. He walked back up the steps and disappeared. June the 6th of 1961, I got a note from the White House that I was to report to the White House as an assigned to the White House detail. And I had at that time become, as I walked up to those White House doors, I thank God I say I'm halfway there now. That was my attitude at that time. Because I wanted to be in a position to help my people.
Can I ask you a question, Mr. Bolden?
Yeah, go right ahead.
When you first got that assignment, what was going through your mind? Because you even knew back then that you were making history. But what were some of the things that went through your mind when you first got that assignment?
I thought it was a miracle that I had been placed there. I thought it was the hand of God that had done that, really. I mean, because here they're trying to suppress my progress. And it looks like the president found me instead of me finding him.
Wow.
And I felt so elated. I came home and told my wife, Barbara, I said, I met the president. We shook hands and he invited me to Washington, D.C. She said, you lying. I said, she said, where you meet him at? I said, I met him in front of the washroom. She said, oh, Abe, you ought to cut that
out. So what was your wife's reaction after you had your first day?
When I had my first day, I'm telling you, when I started getting the letters of what I should do, what I should bring, then she believed me. And when I got on the train going to Washington, D.C., she knew then that I wasn't lying. I was either going to Washington, D.C., or going to see somebody gone crazy. One of the two places.
So tell me, yeah, I will ask you. So tell me about your experience as a Secret Service agent.
Yeah, now my experience as a Secret Service agent was reaped with racism. When I went and joined the White House detail, I noticed several things. That about a half of President's bodyguards, Secret Service agents, hated him. They talked about him. They called him a whoremonger. Called him all kind of names. Said things like he should be killed. I'm talking about Secret Service agents.
Wow.
Who guard the president making such statements.
Wow.
Calling me a nigga. My supervisor, as a matter of fact, looked me in the eye when I was in the Hyannisport with President Kennedy. He looked me right in the eye. His name was Harvey Henderson. And said, look, Abe, I want to tell you something. He's saying, don't you forget it. He says, you're a nigger, you were born a nigger, you're going to die a nigger, you will never be anything else but a nigger. So act like one. Now that was his response
Wow.
to Kennedy's treatment of me, how Kennedy introduced me to his family, how he introduced me to Jacqueline, how he introduced me to different people like Senator Barry Goldwater, Senator Hump. This was his reply. He thought I was getting too big for my britches. Because whenever the president saw me, he would strike up a conversation. But things were very much not at ease. Because at that time, I noticed they were doing a lot of drinking. Some of them were even smoking a little bit of weed. They were doing all such a thing. Women in the room where we were living, in the house where we were living, late into the night. Get up at 8 o'clock in the morning, their eyes look like a stoplight.
Wow.
Red as a stoplight. And I said, something's got to be done about this. So the chief of the Secret Service came to Hannahsport, Massachusetts. And we went for a ride on the yacht Marlin. The chief of the Secret Service now, James Rowley. Now this is some information that I haven't revealed until today. James Rowley was the other agent on that boat when President Kennedy made him change the assignment that day and put me also on the yacht. And when I got on the yacht, I told James Rowley, the chief of the White House detail, these guys are doing quite a bit of drinking. He says, oh, we can talk about that later. These guys, you know, boys will be boys, blah, blah, blah. So I said, well, it's no need of even going any further with this guy because he condoned it.
Right.
So on July the 5th, we went back to Washington, D.C. President Kennedy put me on the helicopter ride back from Hannahsport to the Otis Air Force Base, where I had a seat. President Kennedy waved me on to Air Force One. And I just could look back at some of the agents. Man, if they could have got to me, I wouldn't have needed some Secret Service aid. No. But this was serious business to me. So the first thing I did on July the 5th, when I got back, I wanted to let the chief of the Secret Service, not the chief of the White House detail, that was James Rowley. This other chief, I wanted to let him know what was going on. So I went and said, the president's going to get killed. Oh, why would you make a statement like that? Because he has no protection. I told him 50% of the agents hate him.
Wow. Can you tell us, Mr. Bolden, what was the events that led up to you being reassigned and then eventually framed?
All right, now this is what happened. I became the harbinger of death to President Kennedy. I said, President Kennedy is going to get assassinated. I became very critical of the Secret Service surrounding President Kennedy. I was very vocal in it. And that wasn't, I guess, a good time to be vocal. But there were a lot of threats coming in concerning the president being assassinated. Now, one thing that I want to put to rest forever, people ask me all the time, and they're debating back and forth, was there a conspiracy to kill President Kennedy?
Hmm.
Yes. Anytime, like in October 1963, we had a recording of one of the suspects with one of our informants. He said President Kennedy is about to be killed. And they asked him, he said, how you going to do that? They said, well, we're going to be in a warehouse building. We're going to blow his head off with a rifle. Huh? And
Wow.
that's the exact way that he died. Now the Secret Service lied before the Warren Commission, who was later appointed to investigate his death.
Wow.
And as I had predicted, the agents who were in a follow-up car behind the president had been out all night long drinking, boozing with women, as I stated. And I
Wow.
wouldn't be quiet about it. Now, because I was actually trying to campaign for the prosecution of those agents, they should have been prosecuted for dereliction of duty. They should have, because they drank alcohol on duty. The president was assassinated. The Secret Service had warning, even in Chicago.
Can you dive into that, Mr. Bolden? Because I don't know many people are aware that President Kennedy, there was a assassination plot in Chicago weeks prior to his actual assassination.
Yes, there were, and the Secret Service denied it. They changed reports in order to make it seem like that the president was not the victim of an assassination plot in Chicago. But I have in front of me right now, it's a paper dated Chicago's Tribune, and this was all the way back in 1978. Well, Z Rifle reported that 3 Cubans came to Chicago in order to assassinate the president, which is exactly what I'd been saying. And the Secret Service denied.
Hmm.
One of the informants here in Chicago was burned by the FBI. Joe Noonan was investigating an assassination case, and the FBI told the informant, not told the guy who was said that the president was going to be killed. The FBI told him, don't deal with this guy. He's a Secret Service informant. The FBI said that. So when Kennedy went to Dallas, I knew that he was marching to his death because they had made an attempt in Chicago. Kennedy was supposed to be here for the Army Air Force football game on November the 2nd, 1963. It was canceled because we had reports that there would be an attempt to assassinate President Kennedy. It just so happened on that day that Diem, who was the president of Vietnam, was killed. Now, After the president was assassinated, I blamed the Secret Service, and they didn't like that. I had done some talking with some other people
Mm.
about the actions of the agents. Now, if you notice, after the president was assassinated, the first thing that happened was that the agents cleaned up the vehicle that he was shot in, cleaned it up, got a bucket of water. Those agents should have been arrested right away for interfering with a murder case. Anybody else would have been.
Wow.
Now, not only did they do that, but there was a change in the coffin between Washington, D.C. and Dallas, Texas. There were some things done to Kennedy that would make it look other than it really happened.
Wow.
Now, in the meantime, the Warren Commission was seated. Johnson appointed the Warren Commission to look into it. I wanted to testify before the Warren Commission as to the conduct of the Secret Service. And my supervisor, Mr. Martin, knew about it. So when I went to Washington, D.C. on May the 17th, all of my constitutional rights were violated. The main man over the agents came to me laughing and grinning and says, "We need you back in Chicago. We just unraveled a big counterfeiting ring and we need you back right away." They hustled me back to Chicago, wouldn't let me make a phone call, wouldn't let me eat anything, and took me before Magistrate Pike and asked that I be held under $25,000 bond. And the commissioner said, "What? For what?" They didn't explain to the commission. They didn't say for what. But these people, and then they denied me an attorney. During the first trial, I had 2 trials. Can you imagine a black man with $500 in the bank having 2 government trials within 3 weeks? They wanted me bad. Not only that, but they didn't frighten me, but they sent me to prison. After the judge told the first jury, the Judge Perry told the first jury, said, "This defendant, in my opinion, is guilty." That's what the judge said. Judge Jason told a jury that, "Now go in and take what I just said under advisement." So he became a juror. Now, lucky for me, after I was convicted on August the 12th, they charged me with soliciting a bribe. They also charged me with conspiracy. And they sent me to Springfield, Missouri. After I had done about 4 months in Terre Haute, Indiana. Now, Terre Haute, Indiana prison was full of people from Chicago that I had put there myself, so they didn't give a rat's
Wow.
behind for my sake. And when before I went to prison, one of the key witnesses admitted that he and a guy named Frank Jones got together, framed me at the behest of the United States government. And the judge said, it doesn't make any difference. He's going to prison anyway. So they called a U.S. attorney up there, Sykes. Now, Henry Hand was the U.S. attorney. Ed Hanrahan later on became known for the assassination of Mark Clark, Fred Hampton.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, when they put me in Springfield, I knew that this was it. Because once they send you to Springfield, they had a 4-tiered prison there. It was a camp. They put me in the camp. And there was also a hospital there. And there was also psychiatric department. And when they came and got me 2 o'clock in the morning on July the 6th, 1967, they took me to 21 East, which is the psychiatric division, forced me to take drugs until I literally fell out on the floor. But one thing that they had not counted on is that my faith was real. And the people who were trying to say that I was insane, one of them committed suicide. And that's all in the book, Echo from Dealey Plaza. Now, I would like, if you have any questions, I would like for someone to ask questions because there is so much on my mind.
I know I'm blown away, and I'm reading the comments as they're coming in, Mr. Bolden, and you know, you've been fighting this fight for over 60 years now. You actually wrote an open letter, and it's actually the title of this episode, "The Lynching of a United States Secret Agent." Can you, before we open the floor for questions from the people watching, can you tell us a little bit about that open letter, about the pardon that you're still seeking today?
Yes, well, under President Obama, I decided to apply for a pardon for the 3rd time. I had applied under President Nixon. I had applied under President Clinton. Now, when President Obama came in, I said, this is my shot because he knows what happened to our people back then. Because I passed out flyers for President Obama when he ran for alderman here against Bobby Rush. And he talked a whole lot of black talk. When he got in office in our file, we tried every method. People wrote letters to him. Never got an answer. I got an answer from Nixon. I got an answer from Clinton. I didn't get one answer from President Obama. That was so disappointing because here's an open and blatant case of violation of constitutional rights admitted to by the United States government. And I didn't even get a reply from the president. And it also hurt me too. And I'm not down on my people. I just don't want these young people to have confidence in the political actions of this nation because it's pure politics. And whenever you see one of us in a high official, you can bet he's going along with the program.
Mm.
Yeah, he's going along with the program.
No lies here. No lies
Now,
told here.
I know everybody heard of Thurgood Marshall. I'm not condemning my people. I just don't want my young people, my young brothers and sisters, don't fall for the okey dokes. I don't care who you put in office until we become a wiser, a reasonable, and an independent people. It's not going to work. I don't care what Al Sharpton said. I don't care what anybody says until we get the attitude that we must do for self. Because once that they go to Washington, D.C., there's no help going to come out of there for you. Now, we just doing a pardon application.
Wow.
We just
And we want to see that pardon happen too. We want to see that pardon happen.
yes, I would like to see it happen. Now, I have lost a daughter, a son, and a sister within the last 6 months.
Mm.
It's been very hard on me. That's the reason right now it is taking a toll. Now, another thing that disappointed me, when I made the appeal to the United States Supreme Court, Justice Thurgood Marshall, who later became a justice on the Supreme Court, was a solicitor general. I say now, with all of these violations of my constitutional right, I'm sure that Thurgood Marshall is going to recommend certiorari.
Right.
He defended the government all the way down, even after the government took a Fifth Amendment on whether or not the case was built up falsely against me. That's when I say, young people, please don't have confidence in these politicians, because when they get up there, it's a different ball game. They'll change uniform, and the Red Sox will be wearing the White Sox uniform. That's the way it goes.
You're not lying. You are not lying. Well, I want to encourage people who are watching to post their questions to Mr. Bolden. But you sort of dived into this a little bit already. But about young people not putting their faith in the political system. But Mr. Bolden, I always ask every guest here, and I think having you on today with us a historical story, I definitely look forward to your answer to this. But what is your message to America?
My message to America would be that in November of 1963, America failed. It failed its charter given to it by God to establish a democracy for all people. With the death of President Kennedy, America became non-America. This democracy became a mockery over all nations, throughout all nations. And we're teetering on the brink right now of a massive revolution. Ku Klux Klan have infiltrated to the police departments. We're being treated worse than the people were treated back in slavery. But they knew that they were slaves. Our young people now are in the same condition or in worse condition than they were our forefathers in slavery. Only they think that they're free. And that's the danger point. Now, there is only one solution to the problem that we're having. And it's a mathematical solution. If you have two unknowns in an equation, you have to put all of the unknowns. If you got an X and Y, you put all of the X's on one side, all of the Y's on the other side, and you group them together. Then you solve for one at a time. But you can't mix the X's and Y's and solve the problem. So what am I saying? I'm saying that the only solution to our problem on this day and this time is separate. We're going to have to make a decision to separate and put our young men's brains on becoming independent of any nation. We can do it. We can do it. The European was under our government in Spain for 700 years. We didn't mistreat them. We didn't lynch them. They were under our supervision. We conquered them for 700 years. And our young people are ignorant of that history. They go around talking about why is it that some of us light skinned, some of us dark skinned. Oh, that's because the European raped our women. No. That always makes you look like you the nothing and he the power. When God's the power and we all are the nothing. You see. Now, they have to understand that no nation on this earth, and if anybody can contradict me, do it. Tell me any nation that has voted themselves out of slavery. Any nation that has voted themselves out of oppression. Any nation who lets the oppressor choose who's going to govern have freed themselves from that government. It just never happened. And why are our politicians and preachers continue the same old songs, same old marches? I'm at a conclusion, a reasonable conclusion, that it's not going to work until we, as a people, understand that we're different. We're different people. We cannot become anybody else. And we have a different nature. Not saying a superior nature or inferior nature. But a cat and a dog, they got different natures. Even though, as some of our people like to say, both of them bleed red. Both of them put their pants on one leg at a time. That's what not humanism and peace and love, happiness, freedom, justice, and equality is all about. It's got nothing to do with what color a person's blood is or how they wear their pants. It is what your nature is. And you cannot change a man's nature. If you read history, and I'm just leveling now, I might be getting myself in more trouble, but I'm damn near dead anyway. I am. But we cannot afford to let our children remain ignorance, and that's why I have written several books, and they're all on Amazon. Several books about our history. And I kept them short to, I think one of them is 20 pages, because that's the our attention span runs about that long.
Yeah.
Before we watching some cowboy movie or some hucklebuck dance. But see, listen, I tell you what's coming. I tell you what's coming. They already have out places like Nevada, Arizona, holding places that will hold millions of people. And if we don't wake up, we're going to be the tenants of those places. I'm telling you, people, listen, we are under a people and in a political system of a people who used to kill each other for fun. You see, or warmongering people. And we just have to realize you have to call a spade a spade.
I see what you're saying.
You have to take into consideration a man's natural proclivities. And if a man has the proclivities to kill 5 million people in 1 year,
Right.
better be careful. If he can drop it and make a weapon to kill 70,000 people in one night, men, women, and children, you better recognize the danger that you're dealing with.
Yep. Now, Mr. Bolden, we had a couple of questions coming. I wanted you to have a chance to answer them. One question, it was, what would you like to tell Black officers regarding their moral responsibility to speak out against injustice?
Their responsibility is this. Number one, I never had to beat up anybody, because always treat people like you would want to be treated. That's for everybody. Treat them exactly. Treat all women like you would want your mother treated. Treat all men like you would want your father treated, or your brother. That's what we're supposed to be about. That's what policemen are supposed to be about. To serve and protect. And when you see wrong, do something to try to correct it. Even if it's to go up and talk with the other officers and say, I don't think you handled that right. I used to do it. I did it to other state police. And it changed their conduct, some of them. But today I'm mighty afraid that those days of confrontation are over. Because if you walk up to some of these policemen, and some black ones, they're worse than white. There was an officer in Peoria. He was black. And he used to whoop more heads than any 10 white policemen in Peoria. And his car turned over out on the highway. He was pinned up on his car near the city. Black people passed him, they saw it was him and kept driving. No, you know that's something. Yeah, we didn't even help him out of the squad car.
Wow.
Now, justice is just a word for us. Don't be swayed by that word justice. It's just a word for us. Justice. We're not receiving justice, and we never will receive justice. The system was built. The laws have been passed to maintain the status quo, and the status quo does not involve rulership of this country by black people.
Hmm.
It's just not built for that. It'll never happen under so-called democracy. As a matter of fact, America is on the brink of total disaster. We just had a president, and I also sent a pardon letter to him too.
Hmm.
I never heard from him. Neither did I expect to.
We had a question coming. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Somebody said, what was your experience after leaving prison and what work were you able to resume?
Yeah.
Now, after I was convicted, I went looking for a job. Now, I went to this place, Ingersoll Products Division of Borg Warner Corporation, and I applied for a job on the shipping deck. That was lifting heavy stuff, 50 pounds. And I went in and they recognized me. He recognized me, said, I know you've been on television. I said, yes, sir. I said, but I'm looking for a job. He said, yeah, but all that education you got, that's hard work out there. I said, sir, I can't eat an education. I got a family to feed.
Hmm.
So he said, okay, we'll try you out. So I went working at night on Borg Warner Corporation on 119th and Morgan in Chicago, Illinois. And I did such an outstanding job for him that in 6 months I was general foreman of the whole night shift. I ran all the plant on the night shift.
Wow.
You see now. So after I was convicted, they sent an attorney
Hmm.
to the hearing when the judge, before he sentenced me. And they pleaded for him to leave me there at Ingersoll. And as a matter of fact, they appointed one of their attorneys to be my guardian, I guess that's what you could say. So
Wow.
when I got out of prison, I went right back there. They held a job open for me as lead inspector. And when I got out on Friday, I went to work Monday morning. And I was never a day without work until I retired on 9/11, the day that the Twin Towers were
Wow.
brought down.
Wow.
35 years.
Wow.
And there's something behind that too. Let me just tell you, and I'm gonna rush this up. I know you gotta go, but anyway,
Brother, take your time, man. This is amazing.
when I was in high school, like I said, I was a pretty good musician, and so my father wanted us all to learn to do something with your hands, because he could do anything. His name was Daniel. He could lay brick. He could wire a house. He could just do anything. And he did everything. He said, boy, you got to learn to do something with your hand. And if you learn to do that, you'll be independent all your life.
Mm.
And so now I wanted to take another hour of music instead of sheet metal and wood workshop. That's what I wanted to do.
Right.
So when he saw the list of courses I was taking in my junior year, he said, this is not going to work. So he came up to the school and put me back in metal shop and woodwork.
Mm.
And after I was arrested by the government for 35 years, I made my living in sheet metal work, you see, and had
Yeah.
a job waiting for me when I came out of prison. And had a wonderful wife. Man, I see when a man has a good woman behind him, you can't defeat that man. If a woman stick with you, if she stick with you, if she in your corner, listen, you can't defeat him.
That's there was a comment backstage about the role your wife played in your journey. Um, Mr. Bolden, I would love for you to comment on that. Going on about the role that your wife played alongside your journey from the time of you becoming a secret agent to do your whole ordeal.
I just can't say enough on comment about Barbara Louise Hardy Bolden. We got married. We had 3 children. When I went away, we had 3 children. And the last words she said before they carted me from Cook County Jail to prison was to be strong. Be
Mm.
strong. She was such a diligent wife. She took care of the children. She took care of the house. She was a loving mother, one of the best.
Mm.
And a lot of times she used to take the children to the library on Saturday. All 3 of them, Daim, Ivy, and Abram. And they would come back with a wagon load of books. I said, what y'all gonna do with all them books? Kids said, we're gonna read them, Dad. We're gonna read all them books. Yeah. Oh, she was education minded and such a beautiful woman too,
Mm.
inside and out. A loving wife. And the Bible is right. A good wife is more precious than gold.
Mm. I hear that. I hear that. Well, brother Bowden, it's been a pleasure having you on Moses People Speak. And, I think we could probably go on and on. Honestly, I absolutely, when I
Oh,
first
I'm
came.
just getting warm, man. I'm just getting warm. You got that. That was just the prelude. We want to hear the whole symphony. We're gonna have to go keep this going.
Well, I'm encouraging people who's watching to purchase the book. That's one thing I want people to do to hear more about your story. But do you mind sharing? Uh, is there anything that's not in a book that you wish people would know? Does that make sense? 'Cause you know how you finish the book and you're like, if I can go back, I wish I would have added this. Is there any part in your book? And we're posting the link to the book right now in the chat. Um, but is there anything that you wish was in the book that's not?
In thinking, now there are a lot of suspects about the Kennedy assassination. I
Hmm.
heard a conversation that's not in the book, and it happened in mid-June after President Kennedy came back from Florida. LBJ came to the White House about 7:30 unannounced. All of the other agents except me, they left me to guard the whole White House. They went to the restaurant to eat. LBJ's long back limousine pulled up and he slammed the door so hard that it rocked that big car that he was in. The chauffeur got out, opened the door. He went straight to the president's office, and so did I. And I stood outside the president's big wooden door. And it was such an argument and such MLs. And you're not going to be on the ticket. We're going to dump you. And the last words that President Johnson said as he exited the presidential office, he said, "You better stop fucking with me, you motherfucker."
Wow.
And when Kennedy got that bullet in Dallas, Texas, I said Johnson had something to do with it. And I still believe that.
Wow. Wow. I have one more question for you too, and this sort of popped in my brain because we showed that clip before we began this conversation, and it showed in that TV series there was a relationship that you had with President Kennedy. It wasn't just right. It wasn't just like you're a Secret Service, and it was actually you guys actually had a relationship. Can you share what is the most fondest memory you had with President JFK?
Most pleasant memory I had was after President Kennedy had been on the yacht ride. His back was hurting really, really bad. We were in Hannahsport, Massachusetts. The president almost limped from the yacht. He was going to walk up the walkway to the house, to the Kennedy compound. Bobby Kennedy walked out to meet him. President Kennedy saw me standing on a post, and he called me over. He said, "Mr. Bolden." So I walked over in the sand. I had on a suit. It must have been 90 degrees. And he called me over and said, "Have you met my brother Bobby?" I said, "No, sir, Mr. President." And he introduced me to Bobby Kennedy. Bobby said, "Why didn't you come into the FBI?" I said, "Well, I don't have a law degree." He said, "Oh, things like that could be waived." And President Kennedy asked me, he says, "Do you plan to stay in the Secret Service or are you planning to advance somewhere?" I said, "Well, Mr. President, I would like to be an ambassador to an African country someday." He said, "Well, I'll be around a few more years. You learn to speak an African language, and I'll see that you meet that goal." And man, because I know he was a man of his promise.
Yes.
And that was so enlightening to me. President never walked by me and didn't say something. Never, never. He called me the Jack Robinson of the Secret Service. That's what the president called him. Every time he would introduce me to one of the dignitaries, Secretary of State or whoever it was, Evan Lincoln, he would call me, "This is Jack Robinson of the Secret Service." And I really appreciate it. Well, you talking about, man, listen, President Kennedy was a real man. Now, his works, people don't know all the good that he was doing. And it wasn't political. He was not a political man behind the scenes, because the things he did for me, sending me clam chowder soup on the yacht, and all of that kind of stuff. He didn't have to do that. I'm just one vote. And he didn't
Right.
know if I was a Democrat. Well, being from Chicago, he probably assumed I was a Democrat. But anyway, he he, he had a good heart.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I have really enjoyed having you on the show, Abraham, and I don't know if you're looking to do another petition with the new administration. And if you're not, then we would like to start one of these, because I think seeing you pardon is so important. Um, Even now, even I think even more so, because this is the justice system, as we like to talk about. It's time for it to show justice towards us. I mean, it's you know I think that when we look at where we want to be, right, where we want to be, and we every time I have these conversations, I realize that usually I'm hearing the same thing over and over again. So at this time, it's like I don't think we can ask for justice. We have to demand it. You know what I mean?
Yes, I know. I
Yeah.
know what you mean. But sometimes the cry for justice falls on deaf ears
Mm,
for some reason or another.
yeah.
Now, as I said, nobody ever voted themselves
Mm,
out of slavery. And we have to remember that.
yeah.
We
That's
got to
true.
become strong. Black men got to stand up. We got to creative like we did for thousands of years. We ruled the whole world. There was not one continent. There was not one square mile on the earth that we were not.
Mm,
We
mhm,
civilized the whole world. We came and civilized every nation. You don't see any nation without some black people in it. Even white people come up with a black baby every now and then. They do. But
yep.
we gotta make it, man. We gotta either stand up or get out.
I hear that. Well, I'm going to ask you, Mr. Bowden, to stay on air after the show. I know we have our folks backstage that have some words they want to chat with you. So, but I am going to end the broadcast, and I want to thank everyone for tuning in. We kept a steady crowd the whole time. I think you're obviously, Mr. Bolden, you're a historical figure, and your story of both of being the first and also of going through the injustices that you have gone through, sort of that fabric of America. And I thank you for sharing your story with me tonight. Um,
Thank
any
you.
last words? Any last words you have for people watching?
Yes. Have faith. Do that which is right. And remember that we're all on the same journey. We all want justice, love, peace, and happiness. So if you want it, give it to somebody else. Because that's what they want to. That's what I would tell them.
Thank you so much. Well, with that said, I want to remind everyone to speak power, the truth. Everyone have a great night. Again, Mr. Bowden, please stay on.